Good evening and welcome to the October 7th, 2025 regularly scheduled board meeting. I'm going to ask that before we all rise for the pledge that Donna take over as far as keeping us updated on the Yankee score. If they're scoring, we'd like to know. If they're not, just let the meeting progress.
I will do my best.
With that, let's all rise for the pledge. Okay, we are going to start with the presentation and acceptance of audited financial statements. Turn that over to our external auditor. And maybe if you wouldn't mind, Scott, just giving us sort of a brief, we haven't done this before with a newer format, but maybe just give us a little bit of an overview of like what you do and why you do it.
Thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Scott Oling. I'm a partner with the accounting firm of PKF O'Connor Davies, and I am here tonight to discuss the results of the annual external audit that we perform for the Pleasantville School District for the year ended June 30, 2025. New York State does require all public school districts in New York State to have an annual financial audit. And so that's part of the requirement, just like the school districts are also required to have an internal auditor to review your internal control processes over finances. It's also why you have to have a claims auditor that reviews all the bills that you pay other than payroll. So these are just mandated under New York State education law. So we conduct the audit under that law, as well as in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, government auditing standards, and so forth. So that is why we are here tonight going over this. So what we're going to talk about here, just for a few minutes that I have, we went over this, or I went over this in detail with the audit committee about a week ago. So this is just more of an overview for whoever might be watching right now. We are to primarily discuss the activities in your general fund. That's really the fund that most of the residents would care about. It's where most of your activities occur. It's what the voters vote upon each year, authorizing you to spend the resources that the taxpayers provide to you. And then we'll just briefly touch upon some of the activity in some of the other funds that the district has and what your current debt service obligations are for all the monies the district has borrowed to do various capital improvements over the years. So first off, for you folks as management of the district, as the board in charge, you have certain responsibilities as relates to our annual audit. Primarily, as it says up there, to make sure that you have adopted appropriate accounting policies, that the financial statements that we're reviewing have been prepared in accordance with what's called U.S. GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, that you've established effective internal controls over reporting, your systems for making sure that payroll and claims payments and cash receipts are functioning properly, because otherwise, if they're not, the numbers that the system is producing will not be reliable. You have numerous laws and regulations to comply with, both at the state level. You also get federal dollars, so you have various things to follow regarding the spending of any federal monies that you get. And then you are also responsible for making sure that we get all the financial records and any other information we need to properly conduct the audit and get all the audit evidence that we need in order to issue our auditor's opinion on your financials. What our responsibilities are a couple of other things. Mainly what we deliver in the audit report is our audit opinion. That's the only thing in the 80, 90-page audit report that belongs to us. We're happy to report that we've issued what's known as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. That is the highest form an auditor can provide a client. It basically says we believe your financial information fairly presents what happened here in the district from a financial point of view. And also we issue what's known as a yellow book audit opinion. That's the one on internal control and compliance. In addition to the regular financial statement, we also issue a separate report on your extra classroom activities that go on. And some of those numbers are included in the main report, but New York State requires a separate report on all your club activities that the district has. We issue a what we call a management letter or a communication to those charged with governance, and you're in possession of that. I'm also happy to report that, you know, as we go through this audit each year, I'm happy to report that we did not, thankfully, come across any fraud or illegal acts during the audit. Otherwise, we would have had to notify you. No difficulties in doing the audit. John Chow, his whole team, you know, very cooperative, very helpful, and we really get through the audit, you know, very smoothly. We really didn't have to make any audit adjustments. The books were in really good shape, and we agreed with all the numbers that were presented. The timeline this year, it actually began back in June, where we do some preliminary audit work to kind of get prepped for the audit. Then we were in here for a week in mid-August doing the main field work. Unfortunately, though, you see there's a big gap between when we're here for the field work and when it's actually primarily completed. A lot of that had to do with delays from New York State in providing information that we need for the pension reporting requirements under one of the provisions that we have to do. It keeps getting issued by the state later and later. This year, it didn't come out till like September 8th. Last year, it came out like August 31st. Year before that, it came out like August 20th. So this is not a good trend, which is, you know, going to delay things, you know, going forward as well if that continues. And then, as I said, we met with the audit committee about a week ago. So the numbers for the year came out, you know, pretty good. You had revenues estimated in both your original budget that the voters approved, and as the budget gets amended and adjusted by the board during the year and produces the final budget amount. When you look at the revenue line, the revenue estimate stayed the same at just under $60 million to operate everything for the district. And you could see the actual results in the third column came in at about 60.7 million. So your revenues came in about 750,000 better than expected. On the spending side, you actually expected to spend about $61.5 million for all the costs of operating the district. And you could see you only spent about $57.9 million. There are these things called encumbrances for almost 700,000. These are just purchase orders that weren't finished at the end of the year, and they will carry over into the next year. So you really did underspend the budget by almost $2.9 million. You recognized a whole bunch of savings there. So when we come down to the bottom of this page, in the first two columns, you see like a negative $2.1 million. So when the budget was adopted and approved by the voters, you actually expected to spend $2.1 million more than you were going to take in. But you had previously accumulated fund balance from prior years. So you basically said, hey, we'll use some of our savings account potentially to bridge the gap between what money is going to come in and what money is going to go out. That was the plan, that you would dip into your savings by 2.1 million. But the good news is in the actual column, the third number up from the bottom, not only did you not dip into fund balance, but you actually added almost 2.2 million to fund balance. So that's why overall in the far right column, there's a very positive variance of about $3.6 million. That's how better you did than what you planned originally when the budget was adopted. So that 2.1 million, what I would call surplus for the year, gets added to your fund balance or your savings account that you started the year with of 14 million. And you could see you ended the year with just over 16 million in total fund balance. A couple of, trying to take a little dive into the revenue side of what happened this year. We're showing you on this slide, we're showing you about 5 major categories of revenues that account for almost 100% of your overall revenues. But you can see the property tax line comes in on budget because the town must make you whole, whether they collect the property taxes or not. The school is made whole. The school tax relief reimbursement is the money that the state pays you on behalf of certain homeowners who participate in the STAR program, and that money comes directly to the school. This number has been declining each year because of changes that the state made in the STAR program. And as new homeowners purchase houses, if they qualify income-wise, they get the check directly, and then they pay the full school tax bill instead of it being netted down and you getting money. So I would expect the STAR money that comes directly to the school from the state will decline each year as payments are made to homeowners themselves. The non-property tax distribution is the sales tax money that comes to Westchester County. Westchester County years ago made a revenue sharing agreement with all the school districts and municipalities within Westchester, other than the big boys in Westchester, Yonkers, New Rochelle, White Plains, who have their own sales tax arrangements. So the county shares approximately 25% of what they get in sales tax with all of the schools and municipalities. There's a formula. It's based on the census, gets adjusted every 10 years. So you took in just over $1 million, relatively flat with last year. This district gets a lot of tuition. You take in a lot of students from out of district to provide education, and you collected just about 4.3 million this year, or almost 400,000 more than last year. And then lastly, another big component of your revenue is state aid. This is a summarized version of state aid, but obviously state aid is made up of many complex components of how the state arrives at it, between foundation aid, building aid, transportation aid, all these things. But overall, you collected about the same as the prior year at about $12.6 million. This slide just shows you kind of those same revenues, but gives you a 3-year history. So you can see, what's happened. Your property tax has basically just increased by the tax cap limits. Depending each year, it fluctuates a little, but generally in the 2 to 3% range. You can see the sales tax has grown a little bit each year, but relatively flat. Your day school tuition has grown, pretty nicely over a 2-year period. State aid also grew. Some of that was the state fully funding finally the foundation formula. Some of it has to do with your own activity here, because you do get building aid on all the capital construction projects that the district has undertaken. On the spending side of the budget, what we did here is highlight another 5 or 6 main categories of the budget. These categories account for about, as you could see, almost about 70% of the overall spending. So operation of plant is what it basically takes to operate, the district, the buildings and grounds component, the facilities kind of costs of operating the district. Teaching regular school is your main expense code. That's the salary for primarily all the program activity, all the teacher salaries, guidance counselors, principals, anything that's program related is within the teaching regular school category under New York State. Programs for students with disabilities, the special ed costs that you incur, either in district, out of district, whatever, those are about 8.7. Those actually stayed pretty flat with last year. Most districts, this cost has really been jumping year over year. Transportation costs, pretty consistent with last year. Then we highlight a couple of your fringe benefit categories that you have to provide your employees. The teacher's retirement system at about $2.2 million. It's just based on a percentage of the salaries that you pay certified staff. This year, that rate was about 10.1% of teacher salary. And everybody in the state pays the same rate to the pension system. Social Security, the FICA cost, the employer share of FICA, again, pretty consistent with last year. And then health insurance, just like everywhere else, going up, for everybody every year. Yours was up about $300,000-$400,000 compared to last year. Again, comparing over 3 years, you've actually see here that you've actually done a really nice job of controlling spending, because over a 3-year period, it's almost stayed, pretty flat again in these particular categories. So, that speaks to, how you're managing your budgets here each year. This is probably the most important slide of the dozen or so slides I have. This is your fund balance in the general fund. So this is your savings account that we kind of talked about, again, on a 3-year basis. So as I mentioned on an earlier slide, your fund balance this year grew by about 2.2 million when it was expected to potentially go down. So overall, it went up from 14 million last year to about 16.2 million this year. But in school district accounting ways that we have to do it, you're allowed to set aside a certain portion of your savings account for specific things. So all these things in the first group for restricted fund balance are all established under general municipal law or education law, but none of these things can happen without board action. So you're doing it under that umbrella, but the board itself has to take action on these. So you've set aside about $2.7 million to satisfy any outstanding tax certiorari claims when homeowners or businesses seek a reduction in their property taxes. If a settlement is reached, then you have to refund a portion of the taxes that businesses or individuals paid. You have another about 1.8 million for this employee benefit accrued liability. That's essentially like vacation or sick time that would be owed employees. You have a pot set aside. So if you had an unusual amount of retirements in a given year and you hadn't budgeted to pay folks out for whatever they might be owed upon leaving or retirement, you would be able to to dip into this pot of funds to help pay for that. Then you've got about 1.1 million set aside for the employees' retirement system, to pay that pension bill for non-certified staff. And you also have about 1.6 million set aside to pay any teacher retirement system pension costs for certified staff. You have money set aside for various liability claims. These could be deductible portions of any problems that happen on insurance policies. And then you currently have 3.7 million now set up in your future capital projects reserve. You see almost a $2 million increase from the prior year. That's where most of the surplus you put this year went to. You had voter authorization to create this reserve, and then you will need voter approval to spend from it, but it would help offset future projects that the district might be undertaking rather than having to go out to bond and incur interest costs and so forth. You now have a pot of funds that would be available to help offset that in the future. You have, as we saw before on the other slide, what are called purchases on order, or 699,000. These are purchase orders that just were not finished as of June, but were out of last year's budget. So that authorization rolls over into the budget you're in now. So John and his team can finish paying those bills and have authorization to do that. Then you used 1.1 million to help balance the year that you're in. So where I showed you on the other slide where you expected spending to exceed revenues, when we do this again next year, you're also going to see the expectation that you're going to spend more than what you're going to take in. But because you have this fund balance, you have those resources, because otherwise you would have had to cut spending by 1.1 million, increase property taxes an additional 1.1, something in between. Because you have to adopt a balanced spending plan, unlike the federal government. So what's left out of that $16 million savings account is this $2.5 million. That's the plug, as we call it. It's the unassigned fund balance, or what we call free and clear fund balance. That amount is not allowed to be more than 4% of your next year's budget. This amount is right at that maximum of 4%. So you're really in very good shape here, because you do have money in reserves for specific items, and you have the maximum that the state allows in unassigned fund balance. So kudos to the district for that. And then lastly, other fund balance accounts. These are non-general fund things. So right now in your capital projects fund, you started with 2.5 million. but money was spent this year on various things. Some money came into the fund, and right now there's $800,000. But I know the district has plans for, you know, some more significant capital projects. There will probably be some, you know, borrowings through debt to finance, you know, what you have planned in the upcoming years. You do have a nice amount of money in your debt service fund. You have $2.6 million. That's important because that comes from either previously bonded projects that you didn't have to spend as much as you thought. So now you had extra money. That goes into this fund. If you earned interest while you were spending the money, that goes into this fund. These monies can only be used to help offset debt service costs going forward. So as you're developing the next budget and so forth, this would be, you know, a bucket of funds that could be used to help offset any new debt, you know, that's coming on. It helps level everything out. So this can only be used for against future debt. The school lunch fund is what school lunch sounds like it is. It's the income and expenses to operate the lunch program. It stayed pretty flat for the current year. Overall revenues and spending came in just under $700,000. Includes federal aid, state aid, and you know, the amount of money that, you know, folks pay, you know, out of pocket for lunch. And then special purpose is kind of like a catch-all fund. The primary thing that goes through there are those extra classroom activity funds. And we talked about that earlier. Lastly, the final slide is just your current debt situation at the district. So you currently have 5 bonds outstanding issued in various times. The original amount of this debt was about $53 million. As of June 25, you know, after you make pay downs each year on this debt, you currently have outstanding debt of just over $37 million. What's more important, though, is the bottom chart, which shows you how much you have to pay back on that $37 million each year, you know, for the next 5 years, and then in 5-year increments. So if you look, you know, for, you know, the next, you know, 5 years at least, or 4 years or so, you know, your average is somewhere just over, between principal and interest, about $4.5 million. So each year, as you prepare the budget, out of, you know, we saw budget's about $60 million, about $4.5 million goes to paying your debt obligations on the monies that you borrow. You know, that's not a lot, you know, as a percentage of the budget. Generally, we see, you know, in most districts, it's somewhere around 6 to 8% of the budget, which is approximately where you folks are at. And then obviously, if you're going to borrow more, and it might add to that, but some of these bonds might drop off. So there'll be ways to time it out, use the balance in the debt service fund, you know, to help smooth that out a little bit. So, you know, that's what you have in your debt service fund. And with that, that's pretty much all I had. And I'd be glad to take any questions that you have.
If you wouldn't mind going back to slide 7 really quick, you mentioned this, but I just want to make sure here, you know, decrease in state funding.
Am I on the wrong page?
7.
That one?
So this, the school tax relief reimbursement from the state government. It's not that we're getting less money. And I know you said this, but I want to make it very clear for the public, because they hear a reduction in the amount that the government's giving us and they think that's a bad trend.
No.
It's not. It's a completely flat. So could you just explain that a little bit?
Sure. So you, as a board, each year, you know, put a budget together, ask the voters to vote on the budget. Voters are voting on the spending, not voting on the revenues. So theoretically, you have a $60 million budget. You're asking the voters to approve that in May. And you're saying you need 50 million of that from you folks as property payers. Now, if something crazy happened over the summer and all of a sudden, you know, the state decided to give you, you know, $5 million more in state aid, not going to happen. You could decide before the tax bills go out at the end of August, hey, we don't need to raise 50 million in property because we got 5 million that we didn't think about. We'll just do 45 million. You could change the levy for that. Most places it doesn't happen, and you says, hey, your fund balance has declined 3 years in a row, you might be starting to be in a stressed position because there'll be places that don't want, listen, expenses are going up, right? You have contractual salary increases for your labor. Labor is obviously the biggest expense in a school budget. So you have how you are compensating your folks. You have the benefits, particularly pension and health, which generally, I would say, have exceeded the tax cap amounts in those costs increasing, particularly health insurance. So it's very hard to try to stay in the tax cap, the 2% cap each year, and not, hit taxpayers with bigger increases. But, some places have really stuck to that or even gone below the cap, but their expenses are still growing and they're essentially eating into their savings, eating into that fund balance, to the point where now if you don't have that available, how do you balance that next year's budget? And, some places have had to do, cuts to programs, to staff, to different things if they get into that situation. So that, this is kind of like what you would call a day fund. We don't know what's happening with the federal government right now. And while this district doesn't rely on federal aid, per se for a lot, you generally don't even get about 600,000-700,000 in federal aid out of, a $60 million budget. So it's minimal. But other districts rely more substantially on federal aid. What happens if that's cut? Well, what are they going to do? So if they have some sort of fund balance, if federal aid is reduced or eliminated, who knows? It's possible they might have to dip into that savings, but it's really a rainy day fund for, some catastrophic, kind of thing. And that's what it's really there for. It's really meant to be like a cushion and not really supposed to be spent. It's really, to be there for emergency situations.
Julian, I think I'll explain it this way. And I totally agree with Scott. It's really not how to spend that money, but rather how to keep that money. The reason is because, for example, for a family, when you have your budget, you have your income and you have expenditure, you're not going to spend everything because you never know. But suddenly, someone needs to go into the hospital, your car breaks down, you need to repair. And if you don't have a savings account and you have some fund balance, then you will not be able to pay for these expenses. Especially now that we are thinking about going for a capital project, we will be going through credit rating. So we really need to maintain as much fund balance as possible, because there will be a 1-hour interview with the business official, and they would just keep going over and over and over regarding your reserves. What do you plan to do? How are you going to use the reserve? And do you see future growth in the reserve? And then also next thing is they talk about the town, the village. Do you see property going up, new developments? These are all important issues they would talk about. So coming back to the 4%, the thing is that, for example, I've gone through, there are years that you had to declare some emergency project. Something breaks and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that is not going to come out of your general fund. You need to appropriate that. And so the board will approve the emergency project, and then we'll bring the funds in from the reserve funds into the general funds to be used. And another possibility is that some school district will suddenly see you have influx of students with special needs. And you may need to send the students out of district placements. Each one can cost $100,000 to $150,000. So these are the funds for that purpose. It's really not how do you use that 4%, but how do you keep that 4% for emergencies?
So we did have an example last year when the governor's budget went out and the foundation aid was cut. We thankfully were, I think, the initial run kept us pretty flat, but there were districts that had large cuts in the amount of foundation aid they were getting, which historically hadn't happened. And everybody sort of budgets with the idea it's going to be the same as last year because there was a provision called save or hold harmless, which effectively meant no matter what, we're going to give you what you got last year. It may not go up, but we're not going to suddenly pull the rug out from under you. Last year, the first cut of the budget did for a number of local districts. If you don't have that 4% in the budget hanging out in an account, you can be in a really bad spot really quickly. Now, thankfully, it worked out that the budget passed with hold harmless, and everybody, I think, got a modest, they got at least the amount that they got last year and then a modest increase. But there's no guarantee that that continues. And we could end up in a situation this year again, where all of a sudden the amount of foundation aid is cut across the board and we're not getting what we budgeted for, because we have to budget for what we think we're going to get before we know what we're going to get. And it has to be approved before we know actually what we're going to get.
The interesting thing is that when I first came into this business, the unassigned fund balance maximum amount was actually 2% for the longest time. And so the school districts and politicians, they all felt that the 2% was not sufficient. So that amount was changed to 4%, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I can't remember.
No, at least, yeah.
So 4% probably is the appropriate amount to keep aside.
And I think, Julian, it's a really great question, because a lot of people probably don't understand that. And actually, I think John Chow does a great job of this in the budget presentations when we're sort of later, when we're in the spring, which is that even when we vote on the budget in May, there are things that we know about the budget. The budget's a plan, right? There are things we know, and then there are always still some things we don't know. So I think some of the examples you already gave are things like, if there are more students that need to go out of district or less students that are coming in district, right? That can also affect the revenue side. Or there's some things around the percentages for, is it TRS or ERS, that we only know half the year when we do the budget, and the other half of the year, they haven't determined what the percentage is going to be.
Also, the health insurance, we only know half.
Thank you. Health insurance. Or, there's also the emergency. So, but even without emergencies, right, there are things we don't know at the time that we pass the budget in May. And so we are doing our best to estimate. And then this is what you need the fund balance for, the savings account. So, but it's a great question, because I don't think a lot of people understand. They assume when you vote on the budget in May, like everything's known, and that's actually not really, it's not true. And it's not all in our control.
Great question. Anything additional?
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, Scott, thank you very much.
Sure.
But I do want to point out that the business office did a great job. From what I understand, as per usual, it really illuminates how they dot their I's, cross their T's, and literally take care of business. So John, thank you, and the department.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. And also in, John's last year now, again, thank you for when you came here, starting us with the capital reserve account in 21, because that saving for the future was just, we didn't know that there was the availability to have that type of an account. And again, that's an account that the voters approved in 2021. We put excess funds in there at the end of the year to the extent there are any. And then the voters get to vote on how we use those funds. So it's not just discretionary money. It still gets on a proposition, but it's saving up for the improvements that the district plans for in advance.
I'm really glad that we'll be using this next year. So that's great.
No, we really appreciate it. We appreciate all the hard work, and Scott, as always, appreciate it. Love getting the clean bill of health.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good meeting.
Have a nice evening. So with that, I would like to see if anyone would like to make a motion to approve the acceptance of the audited financial statements and management response.
So moved.
Anyone have any commentary before we vote on it? No. I do have one. So as part of this, the auditing firm makes management suggestions. They see particular items. Our list is always very, very, very clean, and almost uniformly, it's something that we can address fairly easily. So again, that goes to the credit for our business office. I think there are 4 or 5 items this year. They're all very minor and all easily addressed and appropriately handled. So thank you again for all the hard work. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. John Vamosi was not here. All right. We'll now turn it over to Dr. Lutinsky for the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you and good evening. So early October, very busy time for Pleasantville. Just a week ago, we held a community forum about Pleasantville Forward Together, our 2026 capital project. We began with how we're employing the lessons learned over the past year, including broader communication, increased engagement, better balance of project elements, and more clearly articulated purpose. We looked at the status of each element of the project, including critical infrastructure items like aging HVAC, water, lighting, and security systems, the reconfiguration of the busy BRS outdoor space, an early look at upgrades to our STEAM instructional spaces, and data and visuals on our fields and lights. Our Community Facilities Committee meets after school this Thursday, so we can begin to create final proposals in each area for our architects. There's still much to do between now and my proposal to the board at the new year, and then a May vote on the final project. So stay tuned for continued updates on Pleasantville Forward Together. Before I get into some really exciting things that are going on in our schools, the New York State 3 through 8 test score parent reports for the various assessments, the ELA, the math, and the science are available. Parents will receive a message from the schools tomorrow notifying them that the individual student reports can be viewed through the eSchool parent portal. But elsewhere in the district, Pleasantville Schools will celebrate Digital Citizenship Week starting on October 20th. This is annually a time to reflect on how we can help students make thoughtful, safe, and balanced choices online. Throughout the week, we'll be sharing lessons, activities, and resources with students and staff focused on digital wellness, online responsibility, and media balance. We're also excited to invite parents and community members to 2 special evening events designed to spark conversation and connection around the impact of technology and social media on our lives. First, on October 20th, Pleasantville Schools are collaborating with the Jacob Burns Film Center to offer a screening of Can't Look Away, about the dark side of social media and its toll on kids. The screening will be followed by a panel discussion with the filmmakers and the journalist whose reporting inspired the documentary. Visit Can't Look Away event page on the JBFC website for more details. Second, on October 23rd, right here in the high school library at 7 p.m., we'll be having an engaging, interactive conversation with Dr. Devorah Heitner, the author of Growing Up in Public, Coming of Age in a Digital World, and Screenwise, Helping Kids Thrive and Survive in Their Digital World. She holds a PhD in Media Technology and Society, and her work has been broadly published. See our Parent Square post for an RSVP. Tomorrow, Wednesday the 8th, we begin the annual K-8 Art Show at the Mount Pleasant Library. There will be an opening reception at 6 p.m. and the art show will continue during the day until October 15th. If the sample artwork on the invitation is any indication of the quality of our program, I'm very excited to see the show. Around the district at BRS, we thank the Pleasantville Fire Department for providing a fire prevention assembly yesterday. Grade 3 takes their field trip to the Wolf Conservation Center in South Salem, and I'm going to want to know more about that. BRS just finished Refresh Recess, a visit from the Pace University field hockey team. They danced, hopped, jumped, and had a blast during a special recess, and we're looking forward to more visits throughout the year. At the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students participated in the first ever Sources of Strength peer leadership training, supported by Pleasantville Strong. This program at the middle school and high school reflects our shared commitment to reducing stigma, raising awareness, and making mental health an everyday conversation. The middle school also just finished the 6th and 7th grade trips to the Sharp Reservation in Fishkill. And at our high school, 15 Pleasantville High School students were recently recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation for their outstanding performance on the PSAT. Congratulations to our semifinalist, Sarah Agabab, and our 14 commended students. This is the largest group of Pleasantville students to be recognized in over 10 years. Good luck to science senior Adam Fayez. In June, 2 science research students, Adam and Tung Lam Wen, were chosen to represent their research at national conferences. Tung Lam presented at the Society for Epidemiologic Research in Boston this spring, and Adam is headed to Chicago this month to present his work at the 2025 CHEST annual meeting. The high school club fair just finished, so you'll see a lot of club ads all over the building indicating how many student interests we represent. But the big event at the moment is homecoming. And although I understand Pajama Day and Panther Pride, I'm really curious to know what Meme Day is. So I'd like to invite Julian, our ex officio board member, to tell us about homecoming.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Litinsky. Every year, Pleasantville demonstrates its school spirit and Panther Pride through homecoming. I can personally only speak to the high school, but I can tell you homecoming week is jam-packed with various events and activities. Every year, the student government contributes ideas to Spirit Week. Each day consists of a fun and creative theme, such as Pajama Day, Meme Day, that's tomorrow, or USA Day. I'm always shocked by how creative some of the kids get with their outfits. Additionally, each class at the high school will be decorating their respective hallways with balloons, streamers, ribbons, and any other festive decor. It's just entirely student run. Students bring in all sorts of decorations, and it's pretty well advertised by the student government. Decorating process for the hallways will commence tomorrow, and decorating process for the gym, I believe, will begin on Thursday. Could be wrong. It's tomorrow. However, I think the highlight of homecoming is certainly the pep rally on the Friday of every homecoming. From musical chairs to tug of war to teacher trivia, the fun truly never ends. Each fall sports team gets recognized, and the yearbook takes photos of each team holding up a banner. This is, of course, is to the wonderful music of our high school band led by Mr. Richese. But wait, there's more. Later Friday night from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., there will be a senior dinner organized by senior student government members. There's a bonfire that follows where you may find a plethora of alumni ranging in age. Next morning, if you're still eager to attend local events, there's a pancake breakfast from 8 to 12 that will benefit the Community Scholarship Fund. There will also be a bricklaying ceremony at 9 a.m. where you can order a brick for someone special. Finally, there will be a football game at Parkway Field at 1:30 p.m. on Saturday. Go Panthers. All in all, Pleasantville, homecoming is a wonderful way to celebrate the enduring spirit of the school community and encourage current students to carry that pride forward in their lives.
Really well said. I'm looking forward to Saturday. The bricklaying, although it's very early in the morning on a Saturday, is fantastic. We honor alumni and teacher retirees that can get bricks. And I think we're on our second half of the circle at this point. So thanks to Community Scholarship Fund and PFFL that really spearheads that. And the pancake breakfast, I think it's the Rotary Club that puts it on for the benefit of the Community Scholarship Fund. Is fantastic. So hopefully we see everyone out there. There's a lot of activity on Saturday morning. And of course, Friday night for the bonfire would be fantastic. Anything additional? All right. So we will move to discussion items. So Lucas has taken on this task since he's been on the board of being the head of our interaction with NYSBA. So Lucas, why don't you tell us a little bit about it and then maybe walk us through some of the proposed resolutions? Bless you.
It is that time of year again for the 2025 New York State School Board Association proposed resolution vote. This allows the members, the boards that comprise the school board, the association, to vote on resolutions, which will then become the position statements for the association going forward. These are online PDFs for the resolution booklet, as well as the worksheet are online, so you can see what we're doing. And basically what we'll do tonight is establish our local board vote for these items. They don't have to align with the meeting consensus. We can go in our own direction, or I believe we don't even have to vote at all if we wish for certain items. The resolutions stand for 5 years, and then they're sunsetted. So in our first 7 of those resolutions, they are sunsetting this year. And we have a total of 37 this year, resolutions. There's a description of them in the worksheet, and I do have further details on my phone with the resolutions booklet if anyone has any questions. And it's there too. Donna has it. So I don't know if we want to go through each one. If there are certain ones, I did distribute this to everybody. If everyone had a chance to take a look at them, we can go one, through each one and vote.
I think we have to.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be voting
I will be voting
at the meeting.
if there-
So you'd probably like to know how we're
Yeah.
coming out on these things.
And if we do have questions, there is a Q&A on Thursday at noon. And I can get, further information if we do have questions on particular components of this. And then next Thursday will be the vote.
Great. So why don't you take us through each one,
Okay.
maybe with your recommendation, and then any other board member can jump in and give their thoughts about it as well.
Okay. The first resolution is sunsetting, and that is the New York State School Board Association opposing to expand mayoral control to school districts beyond New York City. And that is their meeting consensus was to support that. I have no reason to not support that, so I would continue that.
And when they say more mayoral control, they're talking about the New York City mayor specifically, or any mayor?
I believe it's the New York City
I
mayor.
assume so,
Yes.
but just to clarify, right?
But I'll put that note and look it up on.
And just to clarify, if you have any thoughts as well, we'd appreciate your input because a lot of this stuff has ramifications, both budgetary and operational. So your insights are invaluable in that. Well,
The second resolution sunsetting is a New York State School Board Association supports legislation at the state and or federal level that would allow and enhance the sharing of services among school districts and other municipalities. And the consensus was to support it.
how is this different from regionalization?
That's a good question. And that was one of my questions on Thursday will be that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to support that until I really actually understood how it's different from regionalization because, and I'm surprised, it must be different because they're supporting it.
Mhm.
Where there was a lot of opposition to the regionalization conversation.
The third item, a sunsetting resolution, New York State School Board Association supports proposal aimed at addressing the cost and administrative burdens of legal actions related to special education placements and services. And the consensus was to support that. I'm aligned with
I have no
that?
issue with that one.
Yep. The fourth resolution, sunsetting resolution, New York State School Board Association supports incorporating pre-kindergarten funding into the school aid formulas used for K through 12 education. The consensus was to support that.
John, do you have any thoughts about that one? Right now it's separate, correct? And then you have to apply for it, but they basically removed it from foundation aid and put it to this, like they've allocated a portion of it. So incorporating it into the overall school aid, would that, how does that impact us as a school district that maintains a pre-kindergarten program?
I really don't think there will be any impact because I think it's just moving from one category to the other. Okay, will be in the state aid run rather than subtracted out from the grant.
Okay.
Yeah, but we would remove it from the application mechanism. So it would simply save us time.
On board with that?
Number 5, sunsetting resolution, New York State School Board Association produce and widely recommend the adoption of a board policy or language to be added to the existing policy related to child abuse, stating that the adopting district will encourage and facilitate all school personnel, including those who are mandated reporters and those who are not, to participate once every 3 years in a course or workshop that presents information related to signs of child abuse and the responsibilities of reporting it. That what consensus was support with comments, which are on.
I thought it was good.
It was about whether or not this is necessary, given the expansion of mandated reporters in the last 5 years. But I'm curious if, Laura, Donna, if you have any thoughts about this from your perspective. Yeah, I mean, I can say for myself and in my professional life, more training on these things is usually better, but perhaps, you know, it's different in a school setting.
I think depending on if they have like updated information. But training is good. We all do it on the superintendent conference days. We have a bunch of mandated training. But I agree. I think the more training, the better.
I'd be hard pressed to like not report. Yeah. Every 3 years does not seem excessive for a school.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of these
That's
seem
fair.
like common sense things, so you
Mhm.
wonder why they're sunsetting and haven't been adopted yet. The only thing that I would question is whether or not there's any funding attached to it.
Mhm.
There usually isn't,
I was gonna.
but
It'd be nice to add that in there.
But I agree. I think this is something that the state has done better with over recent years. So there are certain things that are included in mandated training, other things that are optional. This is not only mandated, but they've increased the mandate in the past couple of years. So in terms of school districts encouraging and facilitating, we do both.
Yes.
Yep.
Number 6, sunsetting resolution, New York State School Board Association opposes proposal to raise the number of charter schools authorized in the state. And that consensus is supported. Mhm. The last sunsetting resolution, the New York State School Board Association shall advocate for an overhaul of the current inadequate testing system to more accurately measure achievement in skills, knowledge, and abilities by A, working collaboratively with the New York State Ed Department, superintendents, administrators, and teachers to create tests that are developmentally appropriate, of reasonable length and frequency, and which avoid the unintended consequences of narrowing the curriculum, teaching to the test, reducing love of learning, and undermining school climate. B, insisting that educators throughout the state be included in all aspects of the creation of standardized tests. And C, demanding that the district personnel be permitted to examine test results, answer keys, and students' responses so that educators can best assess what each child is learning in relation to what is being taught, and so such tests can truly inform instruction.
Is that like offering alternative assessments to reasons exams? Or what exactly does that pertain to? Is that just all across the state, like state testing?
I believe it would encompass everything. So that the state is undergoing a change in how it looks at what a 12th grade graduate should have.
Mhm.
So most immediately for you, for example, would be what do the Regents exams look like? Which ones you have to take? But further back, looking at the 3 through 8 assessments and how they're tied to the standards. So you're seeing more project-based assessments that mirror reality, because most of us in a professional world don't take a test to do a task. But also this also stresses local and school control as opposed to the state, because New York State is an extremely diverse state, and I think this appropriately pushes control down as opposed to up.
Would there be alternative, would there be curriculum or curriculum guidance that would be offered to school districts, or is it up to districts to then create the more, I guess, project-based learning?
Yeah, that's actually the fascinating part that they're working on now. So I think if you were to go 5 years into the future, you'd have much better answers because it's really developmental. It's taking the idea of that project-based work, doing a project, doing a group project, getting up and doing a presentation. It's stressing that the tough part about that is how to make it consistent so that it can represent all graduates, as opposed to, well, you had the hard project and I had the easy project. So really, the trick is working on standards so that Pleasantville's project standards would be consistent with someone else's project standards and so on and so forth. So the state can have one system that it's confident represents all graduates. But that's going to be the fascinating thing in New York State for the next 5 years.
So it would still be standardized to an extent.
I don't think it doesn't change the standards, like the grade standards and the subject matter standards, right? That everybody's being held to. Those are still going to be
Correct.
dictated
How it's assessed
by the state. It's just how you're actually assessing whether or not students are meeting that standard. Right? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
That was my understanding.
Right. One of the rationale points was they want the educators at the state to be responsible for aspects in the creation of the tests included that should be sorry, it's very small. Included in that should be rethinking a definition of proficiency. Right now, the definition is linked statistically to a prediction of college readiness. A criterion reference definition may be more transparent and give teachers and students a clearer target. And that was supported by the meeting consensus. And I would support that.
Not to take us backward for a second, but I will say I went back and looked at number 1 about mayoral control, and it's all mayors. So it's like
all mayors.
It's like aside from the big 5, opposing that like a mayor could, dictate to a school board, like keeping that separation. So I think still land on supporting that, but just to clarify. But the explanation for number 2 about shared services was not clear about how it's different from regionalization. So we should still ask about that.
Well, that's that.
Yeah. Like, is it still necessary with, the
Right.
conversations that have been had?
I got to assume that it is different because it's getting supported, where last year when regionalization came around, we were getting letters from every school district saying, we strongly oppose it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's no.
I'd just like to understand what.
There's a rationale, which you want me to read that?
Yeah, sure.
Shared services can represent significant cost savings for school districts, BOCES, and other local governments. Shared service agreements between districts or between districts and other layers of government generate efficiencies, lower expenses, and allow for the delivery of services that might not otherwise be available. These efficiencies and cost savings create more financial flexibility for districts. Pursuing these policies at the discretion of individual districts, has the potential to generate both meaningful savings and expansion of offerings in both short-term and long-term. It would benefit school districts, BOCES, and the state for these cost-saving measures not only to continue, but to be expanded and made flexible as possible.
And that does sound exactly like regionalization.
Yeah.
So the point that I would like to look into is you can see after each of these, it tells you where the proposition came from. So the interesting thing is this is from the NISBA Board of Directors. Typically with regionalization, Westchester, Long Island, very different than Western New York, upstate New York, where they're highly dependent on state aid and highly dependent on external money, cooperation to transport their kids, to pay for their facilities. So I'd be interested in regionally in New York, where this support is coming from.
Yeah, I think we need to dig in and understand that one more because, I mean, it looks like West Putt supported it. So there must have been some greater explanation to it, but I think when this whole regionalization thing came up, a lot of the conversation was, we're not the same as sort of Western New York or Northern New York. We actually do have a lot of shared services across the board naturally, and this was sort of dictating it and putting at least perceived authority outside of the local Board of Education, local district, and expanding the control over sharing outward. So again, if this is an attempt to encourage sharing, I think that's always good and coordination. But demanding it or potentially tying funding to it,
Right.
I think is a dangerous and a slippery slope, especially for a district like ours that already does it pretty well.
And sometimes some of these things, right, like even though West Putt voted to support it, it may be that it's not going to have a huge impact on Westchester, but they're doing it in
To
support of
support
other districts that
Yeah.
really need that sort of push. So it'll be interesting to see what they say.
Okay. Number 8, New York State School Board Association shall advocate for the number of lockdown drills to be reduced from 4 to 2 each year. And there was no decision on that. And there is a comment, which is that 8? Debate over the importance of drills for safety preparedness versus the time required and the anxiety and stress for students. Also noted that current New York State law requires 8 evacuation drills and 4 lockdown drills.
So this is purely operational. So I'm going to defer to our admin on this.
Yeah, so that is the debate. The sometimes trauma-inducing practice of practicing these things versus preparedness. So when I was younger, time seemed to be a lot longer than it is now. So a school year can be a real long time. So the number of drills that we have now over the course of a school year, it's not too much, in my opinion. So personally, I would rather be prepared. So I don't need a change in the number of drills.
Is there any benefit to keeping the number of drills at 4, but only making them 2 of them student involved? Because a lot of the action happens with the teachers, right? They're the front line, the office staff that does the lockdown, the chain of command where the phone calls go out. That doesn't seem to be, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem to be trauma inducing, whereas opposed to, a 3rd grader getting the notification that we're practicing lockdowns again, I can imagine be scary.
Yeah, I think there are creative ways to do things. The big difference between doing what we do in any other place is that in any other place, you may have your office, your department, your division of adults. Whereas here we have groups of 20 kids that you're unpredictable kids that you're assigned to. And if you think about a high school teacher, they have 9 periods. So when will the emergency take place? So sometimes you have to be prepared for that when you're off and you have no kids. What do? Sometimes you have kids, sometimes they're older, sometimes they're younger. And there are so many variables that you can never plan for everything. So you're right, that absolutely would, on the reduction of trauma side, New York State just took measures to reduce trauma. They make us inform parents ahead of time. They prevent us from doing any kind of live fire sounding events or anything that looks real. So they really have taken steps to reduce trauma. I think there are so many variables that, again, I would not reduce the number.
Especially because so many of the lockdown drills, like I said, variable. We did one recently where the kids were transitioning. They're in the hallway, so we had to figure out what would you do then in the lockdown. Some were in the gym, some are in our classroom. So I think I would keep the 4. I wouldn't really support reducing it to 2.
I don't know if this is valuable. I know I'm a student. But like from my experience, kids have done lockdown drills enough where they are familiar with the procedure. So I don't know if it's valuable, but I would advocate for supporting the New York State School Board Association and reducing it to 2 per year.
I think my thoughts on this are informed by my personal experience. I was a senior in high school in Colorado during Columbine. And I think the truth is that there's already a fair amount of trauma, right, around these things. And I having a student who's a first grader and then another one who's in high school, I think what I can say, I think particularly for the younger students, because to Julian's point, by high school, they've done it many times and I think are more likely to be able to apply that knowledge over time. But in the younger grades, I think they need the additional practice, right? How to be quiet, how to, what do you do if you're in the bathroom, right? Even in BRS in kindergarten, your bathroom's in your room. And then after that, it's not. And what do you do if you're in the bathroom? What do you do if you're, in the gym? And so I think for younger students, although it's tough, and I will say that I think that the district does a really great job. None of my kids have come back and told me they were scared, but I think the truth is that there's already a lot of fear around some of this stuff. And so particularly with younger kids, I'd advocate for continuing with 4.
So we're going to oppose this one, not support this resolution. Okay.
Oh, right. Yes.
Oppose.
Those because they're advocating to reduce.
They're advocating to do this. Lucas, if you don't speed this up, we're going to miss the entire Yankee game. So
Okay, number 9, a New York State School Board Association supports the legislation which would allow creation of a regional high school when determined by local Board of Ed to be educationally or fiscally appropriate. And the consensus was to support that.
I'd also support that if that's what the local community thinks is needed,
Sure.
then I think they should be able to do that.
Number 10, in light of the recent extreme heat condition days, unfunded mandate that New York School Board Association supports the state providing school districts and BOCES with the necessary funding to allow for air conditioning and appropriate electrical needs in all public school buildings. They support that.
So absolutely, unfortunately with any request for funding, it always comes out of somewhere, right? And we're already seeing a situation where, the foundation aid is at risk due to recent budgets. So while I do support it, I think it comes with 2 caveats. One, and maybe you could raise this during the discussion. One, that it not be subtracted as a line item from foundation aid allocations, which is the same as having an unfunded mandate. It makes it look less like one. The second is I would like, any project done in the last 5 years to count for reimbursement for this. I think we've acted very responsibly in maintaining our facilities and making sure that our buildings are appropriately air conditioned and cooled. I don't think we can reach back to the building management system we put at BRS, but we just did the middle school. And I don't think we should be penalized for having some forethought there. It's got to be some reason. You can't look back, too far. It is one that I would be okay with dropping because we could still benefit from the high school.
Right.
But I think it should be at least raised that if, a school district has spent significant funds on upgrading HVAC in the last 5 years, we should be able to use some of those funds to offset or reimburse.
Yeah. And if that were controversial, I think even shortening that to 2 or 3 years, right? Like there's been discussion happening at the state level about this extreme heat condition days happening for a few years. And so like us, there are a number of districts that moved forward on that when they had opportunities. So I think 5 years would be great, but even if that, I think even going back a few years would be helpful.
Okay.
because the conversation, people were preparing ahead of time.
I'm sorry, from a process standpoint, do we have the opportunity? Like, will they take those into account and adjust it, or do you just vote on this straight as it is?
We vote on this straight as it is.
Then I would oppose it.
But you can also, you can also
You can
make
ask
comment
You can make.
Comment, but unless they're gonna adjust it, I would oppose it
because you're concerned it will reduce funding other places.
because it's gonna reduce funding. That's my viewpoint.
You-
I
you've
mean,
never
if they're
seen
gonna
them-
put, and I was thinking the same exact caveats, right? I'm like, if we get reimbursement, great. If not, we're unfunding ourselves.
So Lucas, this whole discussion, they don't modify it or tweak it because, I mean, these things are very vague to begin with. They're not anywhere what like a actual bill being proposed to the
Right.
legislature would look like. I mean, that's always been my problem with these resolutions is that they're so wide open. The actual legislation that is being brought to our assembly or senators is going to look a lot different than this, one sentence proposal.
Right.
To be the devil's advocate here in terms of John's comment, what I would say also for us is that even if we have a really significant HVAC project we need to do at some point in our district. So on the other hand, I would say, even if it did reduce foundation a little bit, like we still have a very large project we have to do here at some point. So but maybe we could defer to our.
I hear you. I just think we're gonna,
And by the-
those funds are gonna go somewhere else first, considering the amount of districts that don't have any air conditioning in general.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna be the net losers on this.
Well, I don't think it's a redirection necessarily what happens. A lot of times what I've seen in these is we put something like that in there and they say, okay, we're going to fund in line with your foundation aid, $15,000 towards this. And it's like with the pre-K, it just becomes a line item that they pull out of your foundation aid. So I also don't think that the caveats that we're putting on supporting this are outside the bounds. We're not actually changing it. We're adding more detail to it.
I'd be curious what Dr. Lutinsky and Mr. Chow think over here at this. Yeah,
Is itching to say something.
yes, please.
I remember last year, the question came up when we can modify the resolution and the answer was no. And they recommend that the following year, you can come up with your own resolution. So my thinking is that either you go with this or you don't go with this. Whatever comments you add is not going to work itself into it.
Even if you do bring it up, they basically shut it down.
Right, that was my recollection from last year. That's why I wanted to when we start throwing on caveats and saying, well, but they're not going to consider it. So it's either this or nothing. And this I would oppose.
So what happens? Let's say every district supports number 10. Somebody's got to turn this into a proposed bill. Who proposes that bill? How does it get modified? Does it go through a vetting process? Do we all get to see it before it goes somewhere? Because again, we're not going to the assembly and saying, hey, in light of this, like just make necessary funding. It's going to be 2 pages of text.
Right.
With all sorts of details about how it's determined, what constitutes HVAC systems. Do we have any idea how?
So how you work is that, because I'm involved with my association, is that then once the association let's say you approve one resolution, then your executive director or your lobbyist will start lobbying, go find a sponsor. On the Senate side, you need the sponsor, and the legislature side, you have the sponsor. And then when you have a sponsor, then there could be a bill that you drafted, and then they will start working to get supporters.
Right, but I mean, I've been through this process too, not school related, but it's some group that's writing the law and then bringing it to the legislature, and then they go to counsel's office modifies it, changes it, tweaks it, asks tons of questions. But somebody has to come up with an initial draft. Who is the person? Is it the lobbyist that's taking this and turning it into an initial cut?
All depends on your association. For example, for asphalt, our executive director and the lobbyist will combine, put together a resolution. And then they will probably go to NISBA and some other organizations, see whether you can get joint sponsors. And then you go look for a sponsor, a political sponsor
Right.
on each
In your
house.
district that's going to support it or on the right
Mhm.
committee head. Okay.
There are lobbyists from every quarter. So NICET, State Teachers Union, they have a lobby group. Administrators have a lobby group. Superintendents have a lobby group. So there's a lot of different hands that are going to try to get into this legislation to put their spin on things. Looking at extreme heat condition days. That's a big NICET element item. So this is just our little sliver of control to add our 2 cents, but there's a lot of 2 cents being added to this. So this is just a little tip of the iceberg.
So hearing that and sort of where this leaves me is, I think even if they're going to ignore it, I think you need to raise it so that people, when they're making their decisions, when they're voting to support it or oppose it, are thinking about the unfunded mandate and the retroactivity. And then when they inevitably say, that's great, but we're putting up this and we're opposing it for the reason that it lacks those aspects.
I do think that something that's good about the way this one is worded is that it does name the unfunded mandate, which obviously they're thinking about resources and how the resources are going to pay for these things. And I think, so I think that sort of at least gives sort of a lens on how why they're doing this, which you would think may be receptive to, like, let's make it clear it's not reducing other things, because then it's still an unfunded mandate. Right.
And this one is actually not an unfunded mandate, right? Because it sets temperatures where it says you can no longer have class. It doesn't say you must go buy an air conditioner.
Right.
In fact, I think the suggestion is when it gets to an uncomfortable temperature, they recommend thinking about turning on an air conditioner. But it doesn't tell you you have to do it.
At the last minute, they balked and they put when practical.
Yeah.
So we don't actually have to do it.
Right.
But again, you're gonna any electricians union, any manufacturers of air conditioning units, they're all of their lobby groups are all on this.
I think it's based on this discussion. I think it's we oppose it, but you need to raise those 2 items as sort of discussion points so that at least other people are thinking about it the same way before they vote. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Number 11, New York State School Board Association supports the state to safely incorporate AI into curriculum and district operations. No decision. With a comment debate over the need for guidance and data privacy, guardrails for AI versus fears that legislation can be very inflexible and hard to change as AI continues to evolve. A more targeted resolution calling for guidance from New York State SED on use of AI in the classroom and in district operations was more positively received.
So personally, I agree with this one, except I think it's too early. I think we're doing a nice job of it. I think things are changing radically on a very, very quick timetable. I worry that any kind of legislation to safely incorporate AI is going to be outdated before it passes. So I think it's premature. And that's, in my opinion, why I would oppose it and just rely on our staff to assess what's right for Pleasantville right now until the real picture really develops here.
Would there be like a curriculum or provided, or literacy programs, also like teacher
Usually more like
development,
their
or teacher training teachers to, I don't know, adequately implement AI into the curriculums? Because I personally, as a student, obviously I noticed that the majority of kids are using AI. I would say around 75% of kids are using AI. But the truth is that 500 million people use AI every week around the world. And if we're not somehow implementing AI into our curriculum, I think that students will ultimately be ill prepared. So I'm personally in favor of this. I'm just curious to know kind of more of the specifics of the curriculum.
So I actually had the same reaction that Julian had, which is it's already happening. We're already you know, even though I think our district is doing maybe more than others, it's already happening. And I think we have gotten consistent feedback, right? That the way technology and digital platforms rolled out as a response to COVID, because it was necessary, also maybe did so in a way that folks didn't always feel like there was enough thought and intention put behind it. And are we leveraging it to its best ability? Are we doing it safely? Are we thinking about screen time and the impact on mental health, right? I mean, these are things we're still hearing from folks. And I think we're already on our, not us specifically, but the world is already on back on its heels when it comes to AI. And I think it's already happening. And without a real proactive push to develop things that are, of course, need to be flexible, acknowledge that this is going to be something that's constantly evolving. I read this, and to Julian's question, I think I'd love to hear from you know, the administrators and also maybe from Loredana on this, is that I was assuming this would be, you know, thinking about what are those standards that are applied to this, and it would be about really also developing opportunities for teachers to learn. And I mean, even knowing when students are using AI or not is like a big question right now. So I think if we're not proactively saying that we're going to do it, then we are not. We don't have control of it now, and we're only going to get further away from being able to proactively figure this out. If we wait, you know, it's constantly going to be a few steps ahead of us.
I would just posit, and I don't disagree with anything that you said, but again, I think this is something, and then I'll turn it over to Eric on this. I think right now we're in a better position to handle it as a district level. I think these are important things. I think this is going to radically shift a lot of things in our lives. And I think we have to incorporate it into our curriculum. I'm just not sure that the state is the right place to do it right now, given how fast it's changing. I think we need to be a little bit more nimble than potentially regulations that are coming out that are one size fits all for every district in the state. And by the way, I think eventually we will reach a place where having this would be appropriate at a state level. I just think we're too early. And I think we have to encourage our district to incorporate it and make our kids future ready, because this is going to be, it's going to touch every aspect of God bless you, of everyone's life. It's changing the way that companies do business. It's changing the way companies hire, changing the way people learn, ask questions. So I think we have to be on top of it. I just don't want to necessarily cede over control of that yet. Yeah.
Did you guys read the comments that they have? They're basically saying, you know, do we want to turn this over to the state, or do we want to keep it local?
This really is the discussion, isn't it? I think in terms of pacing, this is a train that has already passed us. We're all just trying to catch up. I look back historically, and Aaron, I'm glad you pointed out that you were a student during Columbine before I said I was teaching at Columbine. But I remember back to taking typing class so that I would be able to type. What student takes typing now? They all know how to type because it's just part of what we do. We used to have technology class where you would learn how to word process, do a PowerPoint. And then those things just became part of other classes that you had to learn. So to look at what Julian was saying about having it in the curriculum, we're already using it. There's not going to be, you know, AI instruction. I think that the people who are writing these laws are using AI in their document creation. Mm-hmm. So this is already happening. We're using it. Students are using it. Teachers are using it to create tests. It's coming into our security systems. You know, talk to any of our IT staff. It's already here. It's already going. So to think that that glacial legislatures are going to be able to create a law that's going to be able to do anything useful for us, I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is something where it's absolutely relying on local control, a nimble teaching staff. Look at Mr. Sammartano's technology committee that he's forming to tackle things just like this. That's what we have to do and learn how to incorporate it in what we're already doing, not try to compartmentalize it, because this is not something that is a discrete thing. It's within everything that we're doing. So there are elements of what everybody said that's absolutely true.
And I think it's important that, right now it's, a trajectory going up, and we need to wait until this sort of flattens out a bit before we start making bigger decisions that govern these, AI policies that the state would do. So I would oppose the state controlling local districts at this point, but once things settle down and, just like the internet, when that, surfaced and everyone thought that was going to take over everything, we can create those controls, and, the state can create those controls once things start leveling out. But right now it's in a period of extreme growth, and we don't know where it's headed.
The
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so. All I'll say, and I'm comfortable opposing it, but I think I want to say two things. One is that I think we have to challenge ourselves to not think that there is going to be a plateau here, because I just actually don't think that that's true. I think it's going to be, even if you use the internet, then it was smartphones, then it was, right. There's always another thing that when it comes to technology, we never really catch up. Right. And so I think I would just challenge us to sort of reframe how we're thinking about it, which is that, yes, the train has left the station and it always leaves the station without us, right? Because it's just moving at such a fast pace, it's impossible. Right. And so along those lines, and to Julian's point, I think then we have to really hold ourselves in the district to a standard that we're actually going to really look at this and talk about it and understand it and make sure that work is happening, no matter who's in, who's in the decision-making chair at this time, because students are not going to be able to be effective, in their professional careers if they don't know how to do this appropriately. So we haven't spent a lot of time talking about it. And so I think if we're understand that it may not be the right role for the state at this moment, but then we have to really actually hold ourselves accountable to it. And I don't know that we have, at least as a board, I don't know that we've done that yet.
We should have a broader, we have a lot of these to go through still, but I 100% agree. And I think maybe we should put it on the agenda for another meeting to potentially put a policy in place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Encouraging, supporting the adoption of appropriate AI in the curriculum. I mean, we just hired, I'm going to call him the director of the CIA because I just think that sounds so cool. We can coordinate with him and we can coordinate with Michael and Eric and come up with a policy that sort of makes sense, that reinforces the idea that the board encourages this. We know that this is important. We know that this is the direction things are heading in, and we want everybody to really sort of acknowledge that and take the extra CLE class to learn about how to incorporate it into English, physics, math, whatever it may be. And the dangers, by the way, too, because I know a lot of kids are using it as like the new Google. Like you ask a question and it comes back and it gives you an answer. And I mean, I personally found, we use it in my work a lot, and there are instances where it gives me an answer that is completely incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gives me a site and I check the site and the site doesn't say what it said. So this is still an imperfect technology. All of these large language models are just guessing at the right words, just really, really, really fast. So I think curriculum that makes people aware of that and teaches them, hey, you're going to have to go and verify this stuff independently when you come up with it. And, you're not going to be submitting college essays at this point, at least, that are generated by AI. You're going to have to put your own stamp, your own voice on them. they're great tools. They're going to be amazing tools for a lot of different professions. But I think we can talk about a policy supporting that and sort of encouraging the teachers and the curriculum to sort of guide into that.
Just from a process standpoint, I know I arrived late. We've done 11. There's 26 more to go. No, I just was trying to time it out here. That we are 1/3 of the way through. Do we want to move to ones that we disagree with the recommendation on, or do we want to go through everyone and talk?
I'd like to hear from people that have been at the meeting the entire night, what their opinion is, and
Happy to share
just so
my
you know,
delay.
just so you know, we asked Lucas to go faster, and this is what's happened.
But you,
We
Yeah.
did at the beginning to say we were going to go through each one. We did have
We
that
did?
conversations. Yeah.
okay.
Number 12, New York State School Board Association opposed proposals that would provide tuition tax credits or educational vouchers that benefit private or parochial schools. The consensus was support that.
Yep.
Mhm. Number 13, New York State School Board Association shall advocate to the New York State Education Department, the United States Department of Agriculture, and federal legislatures for 1, the reinstatement of whole milk as an allowable option in school breakfast and lunch programs, in addition to existing low-fat offerings. 2, the recognition of updated nutritional science supporting the safety and benefits of whole milk in diets of children and adolescents. That is, the consensus was opposed with comment.
What was the opposition to this?
No, it said that it was not up, is kind of beyond the purview of the local board and it's sort of too small of an issue
Perspective
for
is that,
kids, but are spending their time on. And I kind of felt the same way. I was like, why are we just focused on whole milk? Like, if you want to take a look at the nutritional standards,
I'm on board.
I would be
Right.
on board with that, but it seems wild to just focus on milk.
Okay.
agreed. 14, New York State School Board Association shall advocate for the amendments to New York State Education Department regulations to allow a set amount of daily recess time up to 30 minutes per day to count towards required instructional hours for elementary students. Consensus was opposed with comment.
And the comment was that New York State's already doing a statewide survey on recess and that calendar days are currently more of an issue. So I think if they're already doing a statewide survey, maybe we wait and see what that says rather than prioritizing it this year. Although I personally would be in support of more active time for younger students,
Mhm.
but sounds like
I'm
something
okay
else.
with that.
To oppose?
Yeah.
New York, number 15, New York State School Board Association shall advocate for the following policy changes: substantial increases in state reimbursement rates for out-of-district special education placements to reflect true and current costs, including transportation and related services, by way of reform of excess cost aid formula to ensure more equitable and timely distribution of funding, particularly to districts facing a high proportion of costly mandated placements relative to total enrollment. The consensus was no decision with comment.
Foundation aid should be, reworking that foundation aid should be how we address this. I was curious what John Chow might think about this. Or Don.
Reality is that the reimbursement rate is very low. And I'm not sure whether you should really wait for changing the foundation aid or just go for this. I don't know.
That was my thought reading this, is I would support this. I understand the comment of look at the foundation aid, but I looked through here and I didn't see a foundation aid proposal. So if that's lacking, then I would support this.
I'd be on board with that too.
So
It might be an easier lift also than reworking the foundation aid formula.
to support it.
Mhm.
Number 16, New York State School Board Association seeks to and promote legislation to reform current legal notice publication requirements. Support.
I support that. And I think the commentary on this one was about just making sure that older community members, non-parents are more likely to see school information, newspapers,
Mhm.
and school districts could be open to accusations of hiding information if it's difficult to find on their website. So that was why
That was your comment.
that was the comment on why there was no decision.
Do we support? Yep. Okay. Number 17, New York State School Board Association supports limiting a district's potential annual hold harmless phase out to no more than 2% of the district budget, even if doing so extends that district's overall phase out period. Oppose with comment.
And this was that NISBA should be pushing to keep save harmless rather than offering alternatives.
Right.
I agree with, which I agree with.
So we support.
Oppose.
Sorry. Number 18, New York State School Board Association advocates for a budget threshold to protect rural districts with low enrollment and large geographical footprints in the foundation aid formula. The consensus was opposed with comment.
Right.
Same. Opposed? Number 19, New York State School Board Association support legislation allowing school districts to receive compensation from the New York Liquidation Bureau for liability insurance claims arising out of claims brought under the Child Victim Act in cases where the insurance company holding the policy became insolvent and its estate was executed by the Liquidation Bureau. Support with comment.
So just for context, this is around with CVA, they expanded how far back? Was that they changed the statute of limitations, right? And so then districts could have cases that went back super far and there may not be an insurance company
That's tied.
that was, or that insurance company may have gone out of business,
Yeah.
right? Or closed down. And so they would need sources of revenue to pay for a claim. So, I mean, I would support that, but.
Yep. Number 20, New York State School Board Association supports an amendment to New York State law that would authorize public school districts to establish a fund health insurance reserve funds through board-approved resolutions. They support that.
Is it safe to assume that John Chow would support that?
You know, the reality is that liability insurance really has been going up quite large. So I think it is a good idea to set aside reserve fund.
Support. 21, New York State School Board Association urges the New York State Legislature to amend General Municipal Law, Section 6-J to explicitly include BOCES among the entities authorized to establish and maintain workers' compensation reserve funds. Support.
I can't think of a good reason why we wouldn't want to let BOCES do that.
Number 22, New York State School Board Association shall support legislative and or regulatory changes to add financial literacy into the statewide K through 12 curriculum with additional state funding to support implementation of this new curricular expectation. Oppose with comment.
I oppose it for the same reasons that the commentary provided, but I think this is an area where also, just like the AI, we can encourage these
Right.
things.
Agreed. It's necessary, but.
Number 23, New York State School Board Association supports legislation on the state level that allows school districts to choose to authorize school medical directors and their clinical designees to evaluate, diagnose, temporarily treat, prescribe medications for students on campus in accordance with New York State law. Oppose with comment. And that comment would be concern expressed that school will now be pushed into taking the job, on the job of ensuring health care for children. The discussions included concerns over what medication should be prescribed in a school environment, what kind of follow-up would be needed, what availability of mental health resources would be needed, and the potential of liability.
Sounds like enormous liability.
Yes.
I was about to say, it sounds like Pandora's box.
It also sounds like, why are parents going to allow their kids to come to school and
All right.
do you want to run through these quickly? Because my experience has taught me that if they're opposed, they have like a zero shot of.
Yes,
Ah.
none of them passed last year. So,
Do we
if
want
I
to
remember
focus on just,
correctly.
is there, having read through these, are there any that people feel strongly that we should support? Knowing that the reality is that they are not going to make it?
Number 30. I'm not kidding.
No, you're not.
I'm not kidding. And I'll read number 30. Number 30 is shall advocate for school board members to be recognized for their service via a locally authorized property tax exemption.
Sure, I'll support it, but you have to attend a minimum number of meetings.
I mean, I will say that we authorize exemptions for first responders who volunteer their time. We also, there are other roles, for example, village board members are compensated, and we are not. I would be fine with putting something in that it doesn't apply to members who are currently serving.
So,
I'm not a, let me, if I,
Sure.
and so I think one of the benefits of this is not really the compensation, but really maybe having more people run for school board and their time,
Mhm.
because people view it as a big time, and this is probably not going to be a significant amount of money that people will get a benefit for. However, I think if it can encourage more people to run and take a more active part in there, I think that could help. So
so you might recall, you probably weren't on the board when this came up. Yes, it was just Aaron and I. There was a proposition to pay board members. And
Or to
I will allow for
payment of
the payment of board members. And we had a nice conversation about it. And so like, this is one that I'll actually support. Just like we supported the idea of paying board members, because it does encourage, especially in less affluent areas where somebody cannot afford to take an unpaid volunteer position that takes, 20 hours in some weeks, 30 hours in others, to go ahead and dedicate. Personally, when we had this conversation, it would be a compensation or a benefit that I would decline personally, because not in that position. But understand that there are some people that would be good volunteers and good advocates and good voices that just can't afford to do it. So it is something that I would support, but not take advantage of.
yeah, I mean, similar to folks who get property tax exemptions, whether it's authorized is different than whether you take advantage of it, right? You still have to go through and file in order to get it. So it does not mean that you automatically get it. You still have to take that extra step to do it. So
So interestingly, I'm kind of on the other side of this one. And here's why. Because this would only benefit school board members who own their own property, which means that those who need it the most probably will not benefit from it. And I presume it means whether you served for, obviously there were some restrictions on the first responders ones, but if you served for 2 years or you served for 10 years, like there's nothing here that tells us what they're talking about. So you're going to get like a lifetime property exemption for serving on the board for 3 years. I don't know. I don't feel great about that. And I'd rather see something that was more like what that other proposition was that might, I think it didn't pass. And this one's not going to pass either. Because that was more equitable. It was basically like that you could allow for payment or reimbursement of board members. So like if they had to get childcare or if they're an hourly employee and had to miss work. So anybody could potentially be eligible for this. This feels actually problematic to me. And it's very vague.
One of their explanations was the fact that, school board members don't all own property and that they would not would be able to take advantage.
So there are other versions of this that I would support that I think were more equitable. I wouldn't support this one. And it doesn't have any to all the other ones we talked about. It's very vague. It's not telling us how much, or would it be capped for a number of years? Is it only while you're serving? Is it forever? Because if you serve for 3 years and then you get it forever, that doesn't, I actually have a concern that yes, we need more people to run, but will people run for the right reasons?
And a great theoretical conversation, but as we've seen, this is going nowhere. So, Julian, did you have something to add on that?
No, I mean, I was also just gonna say that the compensation would probably be minimal, and in a very fairly affluent community like Pleasantville, right? The village board trustees, I believe, make $3,500 a year. The mayor makes, I believe it's like 4,000. So that's not really going to financially incentivize too many people to run, certainly in the Westchester area. I don't know. Yeah.
That's why Vamosi was asking for not only a full exemption from his property tax, but 100,000 per diem.
And the rationale was to align with fire districts, partial exemption up to 10% of the value of their residence.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, to Aaron's point, there's flaws in what we've approved already. Right? I don't think that for those that don't own homes, I don't know if they get their exemptions for rentals or anything like that. And that may
Well, I
be
mean,
something.
if it's following the first responders thing, then they
Right,
don't.
right. I think it's a general flaw. It's a fair point, right? But I think it exists in other places already.
Well, I don't know where we landed on that one. I would oppose it, but maybe, I don't know what the whole board thinks.
I think there's not enough information and I'm going to oppose at this point. But like you said, you're serving on for 3 years and then you get a lifetime. Doesn't seem fair if you don't own and you don't get the same advantage. So I would oppose it, but I think it
No, I don't feel overly strongly. I just think if we can get more people to come out, great, but that would be the main reason to support it. And I think it's the same reason why it's there for first responders. It's to incentivize people to a limited extent. I think most of the people who do it are doing it because they want to help, right? I think it's a nice benefit. I don't think it's anyone's first priority of why they're running. Or first responders or any of these. Any
others that anyone feels strongly we should consider?
Number 31, it's NISBA supporting legislation to eliminate the Regents exam testing at the high school level in favor of a state finals exam that complies with Every Student Succeeds Act regulations in the 10th to 11th grade for ELA 1 exam, math 1 exam, and science 1 exam. I mean, I guess my personal experience is that in general, I mean, we talked before, previous resolution about the need for more project-based learning. And I believe that this opposition is fairly interesting, given that New York State is transitioning out of Regents exams and transitioning to alternative assessments. More presentations, more projects, more kind of assessments that are applicable to the real world. And it notes that New York is only one of 7 states that still requires students to pass exams to receive a high school diploma. So I guess I was just curious as to why. I don't know, Mr. Cascard, if you know, but as to why
The explanation of the resolutions committee. The committee noted that the state education department's Blue Ribbon Commission on graduation measures thoroughly reviewed the value of the Royal of Regents exams. The commission included school board representation and released a report in 2023 that recommended to eliminate current Regent assessment requirements for earning a high school diploma while continuing to offer the exam for students who choose to take them. The state education department proposed a timeline that would effectuate this change beginning in 2027 and 28 school year, which was generally supported by the Board of Regents. The committee further noted that this resolution was rejected by delegates during business meetings in 2023 and 2024.
So an important note in there is that the Regents exams aren't going away. They're just allowing us to use them differently. So in other words, that the exams will still be there to be taken. It's the graduation requirements and how passing the exams is tied to the graduation requirements. So they're loosening the restrictions on what a school district can do to grant a student a diploma. So we can say, you can still take these exams, but that's not going to be the deciding factor. There may be other things, because there are some coursework that might be more suited to an exam and less suited to a project-based learning. It gives us more flexibility. So the exams are staying according to the Blue Ribbon Commission.
Mhm.
So it's not that we want to get rid of the exams. We want to be able to keep them, but use them more flexibly. That just, again, that gives us more local control.
I was just curious for resolution number 7, it says NYSS NISBA shall advocate for an overhaul of the current inadequate testing system. What is that referring to? The inadequate testing system? Is that referring to the Regents
Number
exams
7.
or just standardized exams in general?
That's funny you should point that out, because I found that to be a fascinating statement, because that's a real judgment, isn't it? Who says it's an inadequate testing system? Frankly, a lot of people do. So the getting rid of the testing or changing the testing, we've been working on that for years. There used to be an RCT, or Regents Competency Exam. If maybe you weren't in a level of class to be able to take the Regents, you took the RCT. There were different kinds of exams. The Regents themselves have changed. They've gone away from multiple choice, and now you have thematic essays and different sorts of short writings. They keep changing them. The 3 through 8 tests that the elementary and middle school students take, they're the most maligned of the tests, because we still haven't figured out how to do better than to take a student, and at the end of the year, we give them a number. In English, you're an 87. In history, you're a 92. In Spanish, you're a 76. The idea of taking a young person and quantifying them with a number, we haven't figured out how to do better than that yet. So the testing is a way to try to provide accountability, to provide a way for, in general, society to say, yes, this school is doing good, or that student does well academically, because it's the best we've got. And we keep trying to do better. So I believe that the statement around the current inadequate testing system to more accurately measure achievement and skills, that's a recognition that we're always trying to give you a more valuable education, to get you closer to what you need when you graduate, other than a number on a report card that you're never going to look at after college. I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
Dr. Lipinski, I also sort of comparing the two. I also interpreted number 7 as being sort of a broader, it's not just about Regents, it's about sort of all of the sort of the testing and
Yep.
sort of structure, versus the one, which one was it? 31, which is really about Regents. So that was sort of the distinction I took from that was as well. When I look at all of these, I think there are, similarly to some of the NISBA comments about why they oppose them, there are ones that I, in theory, support, but maybe it's not the role of NISBA, or it's too specific or not specific enough. And they, like the one about recess, number 34, is a good example where they were like, we need more clarity. So there were none here that I felt like strongly that I would want to go a different direction.
Great. One thing, Lucas, when you attend this, and thank you for attending it, because it tends to be a very long meeting. It would be great to get some more information on, or copies of the bills as they're actually produced, the draft bills. So we can follow them and sort of see how they develop.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to move on to the 2026, 2027 budget workshop. So this is a prep calendar that we're going to be discussing. And believe it or not, we're like already on the clock for next year's budget. So the process, most people don't realize the process really starts very early in the school year. You start planning for next year's budget almost immediately. So we have a draft order of operation here. John, Eric, would
Yes.
one of you like to lead us through this?
I did raise the question. So at the next board meeting, we plan to have this preparation calendar for the board to consider for approval. And we already got all the dates set, except for the Board of Education budget workshop. We held two work sessions. One was last year, one was the year before. We started 2 years ago. And we had at two different times. The first one was on March 14, 2024. That was after the superintendent's budget. The budget was presented, and then we held a workshop. And then last year, it was before the superintendent present her budget. It was on February 11th. So the question is, I think the first question is that, do you find value in having a session? And do we want to have one? And if we do, when would you like to have it? And what kind of topics would you like to have included in the discussion or the workshop?
I've found them to be very valuable. Wish more people would show up to them. To sort of take part in the process. Last year's especially, I found very helpful. I think probably because I had a better understanding, having been through a session the year before. The earlier is the better without putting strain, right? We don't want to interfere with the process or create work to create work, but we do want to be involved in the process and understand what's going into it and have the ability to ask questions that may change direction. No, we don't want to slow it down. We don't want to create extra work, but we do want to understand it at a more granular level than we have. At least I do, speaking for myself.
Agreed. And I liked having it a little bit earlier. Just because it also helps us to ask better questions later on or advocate to the community. Or if there are things that we feel like we need more information about before we, vote on it. So I think in terms of particular topics, I want to give that a little more thought, but I think that doing it earlier last year, I felt like was better. And I would also keep that.
And so from my perspective, the budget preview is January 27th. I noticed most of these are Tuesdays. I would be happy to do a Wednesday. I'd be happy to do a Thursday. Again, what works for the administration, but I think once we have the budget preview, we'll be ready to go. To ask our questions, to have a little time to sit with it and understand what we're going to be asking and what we're going to be asking you to provide information on. And it's all the questions are going to be directed to Donna this year, so feel
That's
free to
right.
put it like,
She'll be prepared.
like
So-
January 28th, Donna, mark it down. I'm kidding. So whatever works for you, earlier is better for
So
us.
maybe we can go back and talk about the timing. I think last time it was actually right before the board meeting. We started at 6:30.
Right.
And so February 10th is a board meeting.
I would be okay doing it on an off week. And I think to make it more useful, we need at least a couple of days to sit with it, the budget preview, so that we can send you questions in advance so that we can make the meeting productive.
So what I'm hearing is that after the budget preview, so it would be after January 27th, but before March 3rd.
Yeah.
So it's really the timing is right in between. So either we would stay with February 10th or we find another day. We'll go back to talk about it. And then maybe you can give the superintendent feedback on what kind of topics you would like to have included.
Yeah, so I think we're all in agreement. Earlier is better because there's always going to be this time for discussion later. So that's great.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, but not on that topic, but on the calendar. So one thing I notice on here is April 20th. Board of Education candidate petitions are due. What we don't have on here is when they're available. At least I don't see it. Is that something
They are
we can?
usually available. Well, they don't have to, candidates do not have to use the ones that I prescribe or that I prepare, but they are more than welcome to. But the packets that I usually prepare, I usually have available the first week in March.
Okay, is it possible to add? I want to make sure people who are interested know when they can get them from you. If we could add that to this, I think that would be a good, transparent, with clarity on that.
Yes, as long as they know they don't have to use them, like they could get their
Yep.
own petition list and
Yep.
submit that. So
When was the last time someone submitted one that they didn't get from you?
not in my experience.
Right. Thank
You
you.
know who's going to do it
But-
this year, right?
I do.
You know, Vimosi's going to be like, it's going to be in crayon.
So we're at that line.
Okay, we will now move to recognition of the audience. The board encourages public expression during recognition of the audience in accordance with district policy 1510. Is there anyone present who'd like to speak? There being no one present, I am going to close public recognition. We will now move to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And a second, any questions, comments, thoughts? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, that brings us to closing remarks. I'm going to turn it over to Julian first for final thoughts.
Yeah, I thought there were some really interesting conversations. There's a lot of information here, 37 resolutions, it's quite a bit. I think continued discussion on AI and how it can be implemented into schools is really important. Yeah, I guess one question I have just pertaining to the capital project is if student input is still valuable at this stage of the capital process.
We're doing it for you guys. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, I was thinking, I don't know, I still have to create a potential survey that could be sent out to the entire student body here at Pleasantville. I don't know if that would be valuable. But just including some basic questions on just basic summary of what the capital project is and what it entails, and kind of what students think is potentially most important, or how students view the different facilities that will be impacted by the capital project.
So I think there's value in that. Are the ex officio board members, do they count as board members for purposes of establishing a quorum?
No, they have
So
no.
what I would suggest, because some of these committees are still formulating, so having a lot of detail about what is actually going to be done is going to be a little bit difficult. What I would suggest is see if you can attend some of these meetings and sort of gain a perspective on their progress and what's actually being proposed, because we haven't been presented with a formal proposal yet. Well, first it goes to the superintendent, who then takes it and makes the presentation to us. So I worry that sending out a student broad survey may just not capture what the current thoughts are. So I think maybe having the opportunity or speak to the various heads of the committees and get an idea, or sending something like that out, of what the current state of play looks like, and maybe where the student's perspective would be valuable on those things, including things that we haven't thought of, discounting things that we have thought of, or, adding something completely that is just not been part of the discussion. I think that would be more valuable than necessarily sending one out right away.
I just think that the timing of this is becoming more and more important. So if you're going to do any kind of survey work, consider how much time it would take you for you to formulate the survey, send the survey out, get the data back, analyze the data, and then think about where we are in our process at that time. Because what's going to happen is the three subcommittees very shortly really have to start finalizing what they want to include in the outside of BRS. Exactly what we're going to turf and the lights, STEAM, what needs to go into a science classroom. Should we do anything with the little theater at BRS, the multipurpose room? So we need decisions on those sooner rather than later. So if you're going to consider a survey or any kind of data collection, you might do better with something like focus groups or some sort of qualitative research rather than quantitative research. Something so you don't have to crunch numbers and wait for people to, so maybe through the student government, and that's my suggestion. But that really would depend on what Ms. Fedovino, Mr. Palumbo think about it. But you have the government, use the government, but consider a way to get timely information so that maybe that qualitative information might be better. Second of all, consider the scope of what you're asking about. Will it be productive for you to start asking your peers about monkey bars at BRS? Or might you be more productive looking at STEAM instruction? What do your thespian classmates need for the arts? What do your musician classmates need in their music spaces? Science experiences, because those are things that the STEAM committee is working on right now. That would be valuable.
I had been thinking about it almost from the perspective of like sort of to build off what Dr. Lutinsky was saying, what each subcommittee might need or be appropriate. So I think the STEAM committee, we do have a couple of students that have been involved in that, and Camilla early on said like a survey could be helpful, but probably it needs to be targeted. So sort of the current conversation had been maybe putting together a survey around the STEAM pieces, specific to what the teachers and the administrators are recommending and what the STEAM committee is looking at. So doing that maybe a little bit further in the process when there's something for them to react to and give actual feedback on. I think, Lucas, I'll defer to you on the BRS, but I think there is a plan to engage students on the BRS playground, obviously, who are at BRS. But I do think for the STEAM pieces, some will be at the high school, some will be at the middle school, some will be at the elementary school. And I think that's one thing we're going to have to work through. And for me, I feel like STEAM is the place where once we have some ideas, would be one of the most useful places to get student feedback across the district. And I definitely think it's going to happen for BRS.
Yeah, we're going to be meeting with I think it's in fourth grade that there's the student body or a student council. So we'll be meeting with those students now that they've been selected.
And then I would be curious, the Mosi, what you think about Fields and Lights, because I think while there's a lot up for debate in that group, I think it's different than like STEAM in terms of the questions are clear. What should or should not be included. The questions are pretty clear, but I'd be curious if you guys have. I haven't been a part of that conversation yet.
I mean, always welcome student input, and we've had student input, at our community forums, and we've had students speak and advocate for what they think. So I think we've had some of that, but always welcome more on what that proposal is and when it comes here or through the input process. So very open.
Yeah, I wonder if for Fields and Lights, it might be definitely more like focus group or bringing some folks in rather than like a survey. Curious what you want to say something, Julian?
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome that. If we can organize that and happy to, we have a meeting this Thursday for the CFC and a subcommittee meeting, and maybe we can take some of that output and bring it to a focus group and say, this is the current thinking of where we're at.
And Laura, Donna, I don't know what you think in terms of STEAM. Julie, maybe we revisit after this week. Once we sort of, the committee has a chance to look at what's there, and it does include a couple of students, but to figure out what might be the best mechanism.
Great, thank you. Loredana.
Just very quickly, SEPTA has their meet and greet next Wednesday, the 15th at 6:30 at Soul Brewery. I am looking forward to it. I encourage people to come and attend.
Thank you. Lucas, you covered NISBA already, enough.
I will be doing the voting next week, as well as addressing these questions that we've had on Thursday.
Nothing additional for me. It's been
Okay.
a lot of steam.
Mr. Vamosi.
Yeah, just one or two quick things. So, number one, I was, tardy this evening arriving. I can tell you that some of the things we've been talking about in our capital project, are real and were happening. So, for example, today I was attending my daughter's field hockey game, which, due to bus driver shortage, the team was scheduled to leave late. They left at 4:30. Due to the cross-conference scheduling we talk about playing those teams that are appropriate, no matter that distance. They were up in Pauling, which is over an hour north of here for there. So that 5:30 game actually began at 6 p.m. It was an absolutely thrilling game. We tied the game with no time left. If you're aware of field hockey, they can play after on particular plays. And then in the golden goal aspect of it, Pleasantville was successful and won the game 2-1. So, but down here, yep, it was very exciting. The team played phenomenal from the goalie to the defense to the offense, and so it was great. So, just to kind of bring some of that real world things that we're talking about, it does have an impact on the community. And then the only thing I want to also highlight is that we have, and you mentioned this, and you probably mentioned in your remarks, but good luck to all the teams as well as the entire student community for homecoming weekend, and enjoy the festivities from the bonfire to the pasta dinner to the pancake breakfast and all of it. And looking forward to being out there and celebrating all the teams.
Well, you stole my ending concluding commentary. So instead, I will note, I don't know if everyone is aware, but the youngest Vamosi was named LoHUD Player of the Year.
Week.
No, the article said year.
I'll grab that.
It was like the third or fourth week of field hockey. She's already been named player, but congratulations. That's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
It was meant to be the LoHUD Player of the Week, but Vamosi sent around the version that had year on it. So, and he forgot to mention that the reason the bus was late was he is now the bus driver. So, thank you, everybody. This was a great discussion. Thank you. Donna, you have an update?
I have an update. It is the bottom of the fourth, and unfortunately, the Yankees are trailing the Blue Jays 3-3.
We have a resolution to remove the Blue Jays from.
So moved.
Can I get a resolution to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment of a particular individual?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everybody. The board will not be returning for any official business.
Go Panthers.
Go Panthers.